Richard Johnson, how are you?
Hello, Yvon.
Bonjour, bonjour, Yorana. Tell us more about this shark what do you call it?
Shark behavior. Actually, I was involved for a number of years, perhaps more than 10 years, in studying shark behavior, basically through a program at California State University Long Beach, sponsored through Dr. Nelson. And part of this project eventually led us to the South Pacific, where I became the principal investigator, or I should say the on-site investigator, not the principal investigator, of this project, which lasted for 5 years. I then continued on several years independently. And one of the results of that study was the book I've written on sharks of Polynesia that you've probably seen around the islands. Actually, it's a very handy little book for people that are cruising sailors or anybody that might visit tropical or temperate waters that they would have an interest to know a little bit about sharks. Basically, the first half of the book deals with sharks and their relation to man. There's a chapter on the utilization of the sharks. There's a chapter on the natural history of sharks, how they're so well adapted. There's a chapter on man and sharks specifically, and also a chapter on what to do if you encounter sharks. You apply shark sense. It's what the Tahitians do every day of their life. They're born in this environment, and they respond to it automatically as one of the inhabitants of the sea. And the first thing you do is look to see what kind of species it is. Here we have 3 common reef sharks. And as soon as you can identify it, you immediately know whether there's any risk at all. If it's simply a little reef white-tip shark, you just wave hello to it and look the other way because there's absolutely no problem. If it happens to be a blackfin reef shark, in all probability it's the same situation, unless you've got some bait around under your feet. He might be a little more attracted. If it's a gray reef shark, then you must take a little bit more caution. But if there's no feeding circumstance, in other words, you're not baiting the area or there's no blood around you, and if you're not aggressing on the shark, again, it's not a problem. You can just wave goodbye to it. Even if it swims around behind you, they won't bother you. The times that you have to be concerned about are when they exhibit a behavior towards you. If they come in and are very interested, for example, if you were spearing fish and a gray reef shark came in towards you rapidly and started circling, you know that it was feeding motivated. And so the first thing to do would be to try to separate yourself from the stimulus, the speared fish. Let go of the spear gun, let the shark take it off the end of the shaft. Normally, they don't bother you anyway. They just take your fish and run, might take your spear shaft at the same time. A lot of the locals lose a lot of spear shafts that way. The time that the gray reef shark is most dangerous, however, is when you corner it or chase it. Then it goes into a completely different kind of behavior. It's actually a behavior somewhat similar to a cat cornered by a dog. The shark's back arches very severely, the pectoral fins drop, they swim in a very slow motion. Actually, it's a fast but deliberate type of motion, which gives you the indication of a completely different kind of swimming behavior. And this is an agonistic threat display. They're trying to tell you visually that if you continue to encroach, you run the risk of being attacked. And my colleague, Don Nelson at Cal State, has actually shown the circumstances under which these attacks occur on submersibles, an idea that I had long thought to pursue and wasn't able to. So if you know what kind of shark it is, and you know a little bit about general behavior, in other words, you know whether it's feeding motivated or if it's socially motivated, then you know how to respond.
I know that you stayed 3 years out in the atoll of Rangiroa, but north of Rangiroa you have an island called Manihi. And I've seen kids in that island playing with sharks. What type of sharks are they?
That's right. That's quite interesting. At Manihi, the village has a little, you might call it a shark pit. It's just sort of an enclosed, cemented-in area where the water washes back and forth from the sea inside. And the fishermen, when they find nurse sharks in the traps, bring them into town and put them in this little pit, and the little kids play with them. Those sharks, especially our particular nurse shark, are very docile. You can grab them by the pectoral fins and sit on their heads, and they just try and avoid you or go back in a corner where they can stick their head in a crevice. So they're not particularly a problem, even for little children like this.
I'm also add to your credit that you helped Bill Burritt Production film some of their footage here.
Well, we've been involved with quite a large number of filming operations, the most recent of which was the well-known Peter Benchley of Jaws fame and Stan Waterman, the underwater photography.
I think you're part Tahitian or part Polynesian because you love the ocean, you like to dive.
I suppose that's what brings me and keeps me here in Tahiti is the sea. And like Tahitians, they're sort of born with a natural love for the sea. And I've now been introduced and actually taught by many of the locals to where I probably have much of their local knowledge. And I feel quite French Polynesian in my attitude. And I find this a very beautiful place to live and call home.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you very much. Tahiti nui o te whare aurita waherea.